What's up everyone? Today I am painting Batman from Batman Gotham City Chronicles from Monolith Games. This is going to be a completely new series, so the first video I'm going to go through a lot of how to get started in miniature painting, and then from each video after that we're going to sort of pick up at like chapter 1 rather than chapter 0. But don't forget, I always have linked up in the corner some videos that tell you how to get started if you are a brand new person to the hobby and you've never painted a miniature before. This is a great one to start with. Batman is very, very easy. And without further ado, let's get started with Batman. Alright, we're going to get started with cleaning up the miniatures. We want to remove any mold lines and any flash that's on there. Normally I don't show this part on the beginning of the videos. I just do this off camera, or depending on the miniature and how bad it is, I might not even do it at all. But for a first miniature in a new series, I think it's kind of important to show the entire project, and that way anyone joining us for the first time and wondering how to paint miniatures can understand the full process by starting with the hero character, which is Batman. So all I'm doing is taking a sharp knife and scraping along the edge very lightly. You don't want to do it hard. You don't want to gash out chunks or anything like that. You can always run your knife 15 more times. Don't try to do it in a single swipe. I'm using some poster tack here to attach Batman, and I'm going to do this in a batch. So I'm attaching Batman and a couple other figures to a piece of cardboard, and then I'm taking my black primer, that is from a spray can obviously, and I'm going to black prime all of these minis. And the reason you prime is because acrylic paint will not stick to plastic without there being some sort of adhesive on there, and primer acts as that adhesive to go between the plastic and the paint and make sure that that paint stays on. So as you can see here, I'm not drenching each mini in black. You want to just make sure they get evenly coated, but try to keep it thin, and the best way to do that is with short little blasts and hit them all over. I'm now going to do a zenithal prime. This part is not as important, especially if you're just starting out. But what I'm doing is taking a white primer and hitting it from the top down, and as you can see, I'm holding them in just sort of one direction here and hitting them all from the top down with this white. And that is going to make the top of the miniature, as you see here with Batman, brighter than the shadows, and it makes the shadows start already in black. That helps you visualize where shadows need to go. It also helps you when you're laying down your layers, see a better transition between those areas. Now we're starting with our first color here, and this is Flat Flesh from Vallejo. And real quick about Flesh, you do not need to use a paint that's called something Flesh. You do not need to use the exact same paints that I use. Now if you want the exact same color that I get, then yes, you can use the paints. But the point is you're looking at my recipe, we can call it, for painting up Batman to get ideas for your own. You don't need to follow him word for word, letter for letter, and in this case color by color to get the exact same look. Just use the paints that you have, mix them to create these colors, or here's an idea of what colors you can buy to paint these minis. So this is Mechanicus Standard Gray, and that is from GW, the Citadel line. And so I've already used two different brands of paints here. I mix and match. I don't have a favorite brand. I love that Vallejo has a ton of colors. I hate the GW pots, but in terms of the paints, I'm really cool with using any paint that looks the color that I want it to be. So what you want to do is thin down your paint. Make sure you're adding some water or some thinner, not paint thinner in terms of the stuff that you use to thin paint for like houses and cars. It's very different. We're talking about acrylic paint thinner. Lamian medium, that kind of gets expensive, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. But your you want the paints to be thinner than what they are out of the bottle, and then put them all over your model. And this is what we call base coating. And so now we're doing our third base coat. We've already base coated Batman's face. We've base coated his entire body, and now we're base coating his cape, gloves, and feet, which are in black. And I'm using Vallejo black here. One of the problems with black is that even though it is the darkest color that you could possibly have, aka black, it is thin. Not from you thinning it, the pigment doesn't hold well. And as you can see on his cape here, it's very streaky. Well, the way we get around that is let the cape completely dry. Give it about 5 minutes to dry. Now on hot days, or if you have a hot room that you're painting in, it might dry a lot faster. You're not worried about that. Give it time, make sure it's 100% dry, and then you're gonna come back and hit it again with another layer of black. And if it's still streaky, you're gonna come back and hit it again. The thing is you can always add more paint. You can never take it away. So don't be afraid to be thin and come back to hit things again. So now you can see that cape is really solid black. And the way I did that was multiple coats. The gray, the Mechanicus standard gray, coats very easily. So one coat of that usually is enough. You're more than welcome to do more coats, especially if you've thinned it a little extra and you want that, you want to make sure that it's smooth and there's no streaks. Here I'm using Nuln Oil, which is a wash, and a wash goes over a base coat. What this does is it shades. So sometimes it's called a wash, sometimes it's called a shade. Different brands call it different things. But you're lining all of the muscles in his body. You do not need to use that Nuln Oil on anything that you painted black. You don't shade black. Black is as dark as it gets. If your black could get darker, then just use that darker black. Don't use a grayish black and then throw a wash on it. That's kind of a waste of your time. So now we're in the highlighting phase. Wash takes a while to dry, so reminder, give yourself time. If you throw paint over that wash, they'll blend together, you'll get a mess, and you'll have to start over. So to avoid that, give yourself time, be patient. I know you want to get these guys on the table, but be patient. Here I'm just hitting back with Mechanicus Standard Gray, the original color that we used. Now we're doing a layer. So the first one, we started our highlight layer, which is where we came back and we basically redid our base coat, leaving that Nuln Oil in the places that we want to be shadowed. Here we're now picking out the tops of the muscles and we're starting to bring the brightness up. And I use Ivory, which is an off-white color, to lighten that Mechanicus Standard Gray. You could also use a different version of gray. Wolf Gray from Vallejo works really, really well here, but I find it easier when you're first starting out to just lighten the color that you're already using with white. So here, I am not using black, even though it looks like black. It looks very much like black here. I'm actually using German gray. And German gray is a very dark gray. And here's one of the things that I can tell you honestly. In painting for a couple years now, I hate painting black. Painting black is not fun. It never looks right. It never looks finished, unless you're, a professional. So I'm telling you this not because it's hard or anything like that. It's because don't expect it to be perfect. You're gonna have to work at it. And I've been working at it for a long time now, and I still can't get it the way I want it to be. It doesn't look the way I want it to be at the end, but it looks definitely good enough. It looks good enough that anyone who isn't you looking at it will say, oh, that looks great. But you know better. You know that you're frustrated because it's not the exact way you want it to be. That's fine. Don't worry about it. The point is you're trying. So here you can see there's deep black. That was the black base coat. Then you can see that there's this lighter black, which is the really dark gray. And now we've added a little bit of ivory, and I'm talking a very little bit. You don't want dramatic transitions in black. They will stick out like a sore thumb. And I've added a little bit more ivory to that German gray. And now I'm doing edge highlighting, which means I'm just going to the edge and I'm running my brush horizontally across it, or I should say perpendicular to the sides. And I'm not necessarily doing just edge highlighting on every edge. As you can see, I skipped an edge there. I'm doing a little bit of it down at the end and then picking out a couple spots a little higher up to make it look like reflections. I want his cape to be, you know, really shiny and glossy black, so we're picking out some brighter areas. Now, if you don't like the way that it looks, you can always add a little bit more ivory and therefore have an even brighter highlight. And so you can push it a little bit farther than I did if you want. You can make it even shinier looking. But again, less is more. Start with less and work your way up. And we don't have too many colors to use for Batman. He's very black and gray for the most part. Now we're going to get to some yellow in a second. But we have his decal on his chest, his bat symbol. So I'm just painting that with a thinned black. You can highlight that exactly the same as we did the rest of the black, which is we go through and do the little bit brighter at the top. Here I'm adding white, and this is pure white, and I'm doing that on his eye holes. Now you can see how his eyes look a little wonky. When you see it later, his eyes will look fine. Why? Because I just took black and relined around those eyes, made them a little bit smaller, made them fit the way that I wanted them to. So finally a new color here. We got flat brown. And flat brown is going to be for his tool belt, because brown works as a really good base for yellow. Which here I am now using orange, which orange is a great lead up color for yellow. So this is a clear orange from Vallejo. And I'm putting this on the front and the tops. And then of course now we have yellow. Now this will take you a couple layers because yellow does not, it's not very saturated and it's not very opaque. It's incredibly translucent, so you're going to be able to see right through it, which means you're going to see the brown and the orange more than you're going to see the yellow. So you're just going to have to use a couple coats. Don't be afraid to do a couple coats of that. So Batman's basically done at that point. You've highlighted his feet and arms the exact same way that you highlighted his head and his cape. We're using Mechanicus Standard Gray again, and that's for the base. And then we're washing that base in Nuln Oil. Now you can do a lot more to this base. You can have a lot of fun. I have a ton of other videos that you can watch from other games in which you can get inspired of how to do different types of bases. I have street bases, I have forest bases, etc. But this one comes with some cracks already made in it, and if you're just looking to get all 200 miniatures done as fast as possible, this is a great way to do that. So now we're just painting the edge in black, and I like to paint the edges in black of all the characters. It just sort of gives a clean finish to the characters. And here you go. Here's your look at him. Pretty simple. You can see I cleaned up the eyes there. You can see the highlights on the cape and the arms. You can definitely see how the Nuln Oil made the muscles really bulge out and look good. Make sure your paints stay thin so that you can work with them for longer, and you can make sure that they don't have any weird blotches or spots. But with that, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you'd like to see painted next, and I'll see you next time. New outro, I know. If you want to watch more in this series, click right here. If you would like to watch another video in a completely different series, click right here. And if you'd like an easy way to subscribe, other than clicking down below, even though it's right there and it says subscribe, you can click on this little picture right here. That also works.